In 43 BC, a man was running for his life through the Italian countryside. He was 63 years old, exhausted, betrayed by almost everyone he had ever trusted. His enemies were closing in, soldiers sent by the most powerful men in Rome, men he had spent years humiliating in public, men who had read every word he wrote about them and remembered all of it. He stopped running, looked at the soldiers coming for him, and reportedly said, "Come then, approach, veteran soldier, if you can at least do so much properly, sever this neck." They did. Then they cut off his hands. Then they nailed his head and his hands to the podium of the Roman Senate, the same place he had stood for decades and moved the entire world with nothing but words. This is the story of Marcus Tullius Cicero, the greatest speaker Rome ever produced, the man who talked himself into history and talked himself straight into an early grave. Marcus Tullius Cicero was born on the 3rd of January 106 BC in the town of Arpinum, southeast of Rome. And from the very beginning, everything about him was wrong, at least by Roman standards. Rome in the 1st century BC was a city built on bloodlines, old families, ancient names, connections that stretched back generations. The Senate was not a place you walked into, it was a place you were born into. Cicero was born into nothing of the sort. His family was wealthy and part of the equestrian order, but they had no strong ties to the senatorial elite. Cicero was what Romans called a novus homo, a new man, the first in his family to pursue the highest offices of the Roman Republic. In Rome, that was practically an insult. But Cicero had something none of the old families could manufacture. He studied law, rhetoric, and philosophy under some of the most renowned teachers of his day, Greek philosophers, master rhetoricians, the finest minds available to a young Roman with ambition and no connections. He was quite simply the best speaker anyone had ever heard. Not good, not talented, the best. In a city where oratory was the highest art form, where your words in the Senate could start wars, end careers, and shape the fate of an empire, Cicero was in a category entirely his own. His contribution to the Latin language can be compared to what Dante did for Italian centuries later. He didn't just speak Latin, he perfected it. And for decades, that gift carried him everywhere, into the Senate, into the consulship, the highest office in Rome, into history itself. But every gift has a cost, and Cicero's gift was his mouth, his extraordinary, unstoppable, catastrophically honest mouth. To understand what happened between Cicero and Mark Antony, you need to understand the Rome they both lived in. It was a republic in name, in practice it was a powder keg. 3 men dominated everything: Julius Caesar, military genius, populist hero, and everyone's favorite controversial dinner guest; Pompey, the great general who had conquered half the known world; and Crassus, the richest man in Rome who bankrolled everything and everyone. Cicero watched all 3 of them with the specific anxiety of a man who understood exactly what was happening and couldn't stop it. In the Civil War of 49 to 46 BC, Cicero chose the side of Pompey, who to his mind best represented the republican ideals of Rome. He was not a warrior, he was not a general. He was a man who believed with every fiber of his being that the Roman Republic, the Senate, the rule of law, these things were worth dying for. He nearly did die for them, several times. Then Caesar won, Pompey was dead, and Caesar, magnanimous in victory as always, forgave Cicero and let him return to Rome. Cicero was appalled at Caesar's domination of Roman politics. The Republic, it appeared, was being dismantled before his very eyes. The Senate had become theater. The law had become whatever Caesar said it was. And then, on the Ides of March, 44 BC, someone else dismantled Caesar. 23 stab wounds on the Senate floor. Cicero had not been involved in the assassination, but the news of Caesar's death delighted him. He hoped that legality and democracy, the traditional power of the Senate, would now triumph. He was wrong, catastrophically, fatally wrong. Because waiting in the wings, reading Caesar's papers, consolidating Caesar's power, was Mark Antony. and Cicero and Antony had unfinished business going back years. Mark Antony was everything Cicero was not. Where Cicero was a self-made intellectual from the provinces, Antony came from old Roman nobility. His grandfather was a noted orator, murdered during political purges. Power and violence were in his blood from the beginning. Where Cicero was disciplined, measured, careful, Antony spent his teenage years wandering through Rome with his brothers gambling, drinking, and becoming involved in scandalous love affairs. By 20, he had amassed an enormous debt, fled to Greece to escape his creditors, came back a soldier. He joined Caesar's campaigns, proved himself brilliant in the field, became Caesar's right-hand man, his most trusted lieutenant, his closest ally, the person Caesar depended on more than anyone else. And Cicero hated him. Not casually, not politically, with the specific burning hatred of a man who has watched someone he considers inferior accumulate power he considers undeserved. Their political rivalry was bitter enough already. Antony represented the populist faction, the people who wanted land reforms and power redistributed. Cicero represented the traditionalists, the men who wanted the Senate's authority preserved above everything else. They were on opposite sides of every important question Rome was asking. But it was personal too, deeply, specifically personal. One of Cicero's greatest moments was his role in the Catiline conspiracy, in which he, as consul, successfully prosecuted and had executed Lucius Sergius Catilina for attempting to overthrow the Republic. One of the men Cicero executed without trial was Publius Cornelius Lentulus Sura, who happened to be Mark Antony's stepfather. Cicero had executed Antony's stepfather without a trial. Antony never forgot it, never forgave it, never stopped thinking about it. And now, with Caesar dead and Rome up for grabs, these two men were about to have the confrontation that had been building for decades. In private, Cicero expressed his regret that the assassins had not eliminated Antony along with Caesar. In public, he did something more dangerous. He started talking. In early September of 44 BC, Antony threatened to have Cicero's house demolished after Cicero refused to attend a Senate hearing. Most men would have backed down, apologized, stayed quiet. Cicero walked into the Senate on the 2nd of September, 44 BC, and delivered a speech that set the entire city on fire. The first Philippic called Antony out on his increasingly autocratic tendencies, criticized him for using the voice of a dead ruler to push laws through the Senate, accused him of betraying everything Caesar had stood for and everything Rome was supposed to be. Antony rebutted, Cicero responded, this time in print. The second Philippic, a pamphlet circulated across Rome, was not a political speech. It was a weapon. The second Philippic is the longest, most vicious, most scorched earth attack in Cicero's entire body of work. It is a comprehensive exercise in character assassination that has never been matched in the history of political writing. Cicero didn't just attack Antony's politics, he attacked everything. His character, his finances, his personal life, his family. He described Antony's house as packed with gamblers and filled with drunks, with wine flowing for days on end. Then he went further. He told Rome a story of the young Mark Antony, bankrupt, desperate for funds, reportedly bartering himself to wealthy protectors for money. One of his alleged lovers was a rich young aristocrat named Gaius Scribonius Curio, who fell completely under Antony's spell, covered all his debts, gave him everything, and when the affair became a scandal and Curio's father barred his doors, Antony allegedly broke into the house through the roof at night. Whether any of this was true is almost beside the point. Cicero wrote it down, circulated it across the most powerful city in the world, and signed his name to it. Then he kept going. 14 speeches in total, delivered between September 44 BC and April 43 BC, each one more devastating than the last, each one read by thousands of Romans, each one adding another entry to the list of things Mark Antony would never forgive. He named them the Philippics, after the Greek orator Demosthenes' famous speeches denouncing Philip II of Macedon, a deliberate comparison. Cicero casting himself as the defender of civilization against a barbarian at the gates. The Philippics worked. They convinced the Senate to declare Antony an enemy of the state and send an army against him. Cicero had done it. His words had moved Rome itself. He should have stopped there. He didn't. With Antony declared an enemy of the state, Cicero made the move he thought would finish everything. He turned to Caesar's 18-year-old adopted son, Octavian, and decided to use him. The plan seemed brilliant. Use the young heir's popularity and Caesar's name to raise an army against Antony. Let Octavian be the sword. Let Cicero be the mind behind it. Restore the Republic. Go down in history as the man who saved Rome twice. He reportedly said of Octavian, the young man must be praised, honored, and removed. He meant it as strategy. He said it out loud. Octavian heard it. Cicero had looked at an 18-year-old and seen a tool. Octavian looked back at Cicero and saw a liability. In October 43 BC, Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus met near what is now Bologna. Together they formed the Second Triumvirate, a military government in which all three served as co-dictators. Cicero's hope for a restoration of the Republic was crushed in a single afternoon. And then the three most powerful men in the world sat down together and made a list. Mark Antony insisted that Cicero be on the proscriptions list, the list of men to be hunted and killed. According to Plutarch, Octavian argued for 2 days that Cicero be left alone. On the third day, he stopped arguing. The boy Cicero had called his protege, the young man he had written letters to, the political heir he had tried to shape and mold and use, had just signed his death warrant. 14 speeches, and it all came down to one name on a list. Cicero ran. He had been warned just in time, fled Rome with a small group of servants, moved from villa to villa along the Italian coast, exhausted, frightened, betrayed. He was 63 years old. He had spent 40 years building something with nothing but his mind and his voice. The Senate, the Republic, the rule of law, all of it gone, all of it dismantled while he watched and talked and wrote and argued and tried to hold it together with words. He considered sailing to Greece, turned back, considered it again. Then he stopped. His assassins came to the villa, among them a centurion named Hirnius and a tribune named Popilius. A man Cicero had once defended in court, a man whose freedom Cicero had argued for, sent to collect his head. He reportedly met them with the same composure he had shown in the Senate for 40 years, leaned out of his litter, offered them his neck. They beheaded him, cut off his hands, carried both back to Rome. Mark Antony ordered the head and hands nailed to the podium of the Senate, the rostra, the same platform from which Cicero had delivered the greatest speeches the Latin language ever produced. It was December 7, 43 BC. Antony's wife Fulvia reportedly took Cicero's severed tongue and stabbed it with her hairpin, one last answer to all 14 Philippics. Rome watched in silence. The Republic Cicero had spent his entire life defending died with him on that road. Here is what history did with all of this. Mark Antony lost. His alliance with Octavian collapsed. His love affair with Cleopatra consumed him. At the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, he was defeated. He took his own life. Cleopatra followed. Octavian became Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. The Republic was gone forever. And Cicero, the man they both destroyed, became immortal. His speeches are still studied. His letters are still read. His ideas about law, democracy, and the rights of citizens echoed through the centuries, shaping the thinking of the men who wrote the American Constitution, inspiring the arguments of the French Revolution, forming the intellectual foundations of modern Western government. The founding fathers of America read Cicero, quoted Cicero, built systems of government based on what Cicero believed a republic should be. 2,000 years after they nailed his hands to the Senate podium, his words are still being used to run the world. The man who talked too much never stopped talking. He's still talking. History never gets cold. I'm Coffee and Ash. See you next week.